the center of American military doctrine was the idea that troops should be maneuvered to fix the enemy in position so that firepower could be unleashed to destroy him. In defense, too, heavy firepower played a critical part. Every American infantry division in Vietnam could call on massive support from aircraft and sometimes from long-range artillery. Divisions had their own artillery as well, mostly 105mm weapons, and the divisions always set up fire bases before every operation. Each company also had its own mortars. Tanks were used by almost every American division in Vietnam. The most important tank unit was the 11th Armored Cavalry Brigade. All of them used the M48, a 44-ton vehicle with a 90mm gun. In spite of early doubts about how tanks might fare in Vietnam, their firepower and armor were invaluable for securing roads and escorting convoys. The Marines also deployed the Ontos, a weapon originally designed as a tank destroyer. The Ontos mounted 6 recoilless rifles and during the Tet battles would prove invaluable for clearing buildings and destroying fortifications. Of all the armored vehicles deployed in Vietnam, the most useful by far was the M113 Armored Fighting Vehicle, known to American troops as the TRANH. It was so vulnerable to mines that its crew usually sat on top, but it was extremely heavily armed. TRANHs mounted several weapons, including at least one 50-caliber machine gun, a weapon too heavy to carry on foot. The 50 was incredibly destructive, able to cut a tree in half hundreds of yards away. The weight of firepower that a TRANH could deliver and the vast amounts of ammunition it could carry saved American units from being overrun time and time again. One weapon highly valued by the crews of armored vehicles and by foot soldiers was the M79 grenade launcher, called the Duper from its sound. The Duper's range was up to 250 meters, and its explosive shell would kill within 15 feet of the blast. A good grenadier could hit a target the size of an open window at 100 meters and fire a shell every 3 or 4 seconds. For the South Vietnamese conscript soldier, 1967 had begun to show some signs that army life might become bearable. Food and accommodation improved slightly. Amongst the professionals, in the better units at least, confidence was high. Many officers and NCOs had been at war for years and were both tough and tactically skilled. But in spite of this, the desertion rate continued to rise. While the South Vietnamese conscript served 4 years, The United States Army had stuck to its policy of bringing soldiers home after one 13-month tour of duty. It was effective in preventing combat fatigue. But the decision was having a real impact on the battlefield. Units were constantly losing experienced men who were replaced by newcomers, unable to spot booby traps and ambushes, and not yet used to Vietnam's punishing climate. Officers served only 6 months in combat, and new arrivals had a very high chance of being killed or wounded.
Drop back about 5 meters. 5 meters.
American combat units in the field were almost always seriously under strength. With operations running all the time, and the men perpetually short of sleep, exhaustion was beginning to tell on morale. So too was boredom and sometimes disillusion. Returning again and again to the same places on exhausting search and destroy sweeps often seemed utterly pointless.